and welcome to the Open Book channel. My name is Ollie, your designated open book. A little while ago, I wrote an article about unreliable narrators that didn't end up getting used for its intended purpose, so I thought I'd make a video just talking about unreliable narrators, because during the process of writing this article, I actually learned a couple new things myself, and I thought I'd share that with you. So for anyone who might be new to various writing tropes and the like, what is an unreliable narrator? In its simplest terms, an unreliable narrator is any narrator that you, as a reader, do not or should not trust to provide accurate information. The unreliable narrator trope is widely recognized and identified by a character that is presented with a generally understandable line of reasoning, but acts in ways that put their credibility in question. For example, they might be very good at convincing you, the reader, why they think a certain way or the motives behind their actions, but then what you actually see them doing throughout the story contradicts or does not entirely line up with that, so you have to discern for yourself exactly what's going on here. So why do people write unreliable narrators? Well, a well-written unreliable narrator is arguably the most effective literary device to engage an audience. Depending on the kind of audience, of course. When dealing with an unreliable narrator, readers have to actively question what they're reading and whether they can take it at face value. Unreliable narrators construct an internal game of true or false that readers have to play if they don't want to be blindsided by a plot twist or a character choice. So, the thing that I didn't quite know everything about before was, is there more than one kind of unreliable narrator? So, unreliable narrators come in all shapes, sizes, and levels of deceit. Just as all protagonists have degrees of likability, unreliable narrators exist on a spectrum of believability. The most widely referenced attempt to classify the types of unreliable narrators is the article Pícaros, Madmen, Naīfs, and Clowns, the Unreliable First-Person Narrator by William Riggan. What kind of unreliable narrator a character is boils down to why they can't be trusted to accurately relay a story. A quick summary of Riggan's classifications are the Pícaros, who is an exaggerator, the madman, who has altered perceptions due to some mental illness, the clown favors entertaining narratives instead of accurate descriptions, the naïf is just straight up too young or inexperienced to have a properly reflective viewpoint, and the liar is, of course, intentionally misleading, constructing a false perception of themselves with ulterior motives. Unreliable narrators aren't exclusively defined by deceitful personality types. The madman and the naïf perspectives are constructed outside of the character's will, usually completely unknown to them that they lack credibility, whereas the Pícaros, the clown, and the liar are characters that intentionally choose to tweak their storytelling and are knowingly untrustworthy. Since the essay's original release, Riggan's classifications of unreliable narrators has come under scrutiny, as too rigid in particular to the fictional autobiographer. There are plenty of types of unreliable narrators outside or combinations of these categories. That said, although they are not standardized, picking one of these archetypes can be a useful starting point when writing your character, their unreliable diagnosis, if you will. So what's the most popular unreliable narrator trope? Although they can exist in any type of writing, be that a fictional main character or the voice of the author themselves, the trope most commonly referred to when someone calls a character an unreliable narrator is, of course, the liar, the manipulative yet charming sociopath that keeps readers' expectations on their toes. The liar is a staple archetype of the thriller genre because it harnesses the skepticism that readers are already using to engage the content, to solve the mystery. However, this favoritism and the expectation readers have for the liar can be a double-edged sword. So begs the question, are unreliable narrators hard to write? Writing a convincible unreliable narrator requires a level of finesse, for sure. For readers to actively question the legitimacy of such a character, they need to have, at some point, believed them to be trustworthy or trust their judgment in some capacity. A good, unreliable narrator will gain your trust before betraying it, sparking a conflict in readers that, I want to believe you, but I just can't. As they say, every convincing lie contains a bit of truth. The process of picking the lies out of the truth, or vice versa, is what makes unreliable narrators so engaging. Without some form of grounding or consistency, an unreliable narrator can quickly become a walking contradiction. So here's a tip. When writing an unreliable narrator, keep a character sheet close at hand, track their motivations, and routinely assess whether their speech and actions are coherent in reflecting their uniquely skewed perspective. Like the mastery of all creative skills, you need to know the rules before breaking them. And in this case, that means tarnishing your character's credibility with purpose and care. My closing thoughts on the matter of unreliable narrators is that telling a story through a narrative voice with questionable credibility can be a powerful tool for hooking audiences, but writers need to be mindful when utilizing the trope. Without consistency and intent, an unreliable narrator may be considered an undeveloped character instead. The best way to get a grasp on what works when readers are engaging their suspended disbelief, and what's a red flag, when readers will immediately dismiss your character, is to perform case studies of well-received unreliable narrators of the past. So here's a couple literary works with unreliable narrators to get your inspiration flowing. Each of the suggestions showcase a unique kind of unreliable narrator rather than the classic deceitful liar. So take your pick. My first suggestion is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Ward's novels have sprung into popularity of late, and she specializes in writing complicated, unreliable narrators. The Last House on Needless Street deals with perceptions skewed by isolation, grief, trauma, lack of emotional development, intentional deception, and mental illness. If you find yourself looking for more after finishing this novel, Sundial is another thoroughly compelling read with a strong but mysterious lead. Room by Emma Donoghue is narrated through the voice of a young boy named Jack, who's lived in a room his whole life with his ma and is occasionally visited by a figure called Old Nick. Donoghue utilizes the perspective of a child to its full extent, using Jack's limited viewpoint as a tool to juxtapose the harsh reality around him. And lastly, there's Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, which I absolutely love. Everyone knows Gone Girl, but few have ventured further into Flynn's body of work. Sharp Objects is a case example of a narrator whose past impairs their abilities to see the truth around them. Trauma and conditioning play a big part in the narrator's viewpoint, and it's handled so convincingly, you almost start to believe what they do, even though you know deep down that it's, oh, so wrong. I don't do these article-type videos very often, but I hope that you found that informative. I personally love reading unreliable narrators and having to question the motives and intent of the characters that I'm reading, so if you have any suggestions, please let me know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!